Coming up, $1 billion promise at Emory, and it could mean families keep a lot of money in their pockets. We'll break down who qualifies for the big tuition break. Also, Georgia's wallets are feeling the squeeze, but it's not just groceries and gas driving up the bills. We'll show you why credit cards are swiping deeper into debt and what it means for you. And they walk, they talk, and they're starting to look a lot like us. But what happens when the line between human and machine gets a little bit blurry? We examine the ethics at stake over humanoid robots. This is The Take. All right, good morning, everybody. Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm Aisha Howard, sitting in for Chesley McNeil. This is The Take, where we go beyond the headlines and look at why and how stories are impacting your community, our community. Let's kick it off with new acts of gun violence leading to children being shot. On Thursday night, gunfire erupted outside the Capitol Venera Apartments on Hank Aaron Drive. This was in southeast Atlanta. 4 young people ranging in age from 12 to 18 were all shot in the legs. Atlanta police say they were taken to Grady, but were expected to recover as investigators search for suspects. Meanwhile, in South Fulton, a 1-year-old was caught in the crossfire. Also on Thursday, at the Gardens at Camp Creek Apartments here, that toddler was shot in the leg and was rushed to the hospital. Authorities say the child's condition was stabilized and 2 people were detained as that investigation continues. And then just yesterday afternoon, the GBI reported it was investigating a shooting in Monroe County where a 3-year-old was critically wounded as a result of playing with a firearm. Now, these gun incidents involving children are once again raising some real tough questions about safety, both in our communities and in our homes. For more of a deep dive here, let's bring in Dr. Thaddeus Johnson, an assistant professor in Georgia State's Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology. So tell us, how do these 3 cases, all very different, right? But they illustrate both the scale and the randomness of youth exposure to gunfire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really goes to show that, we need to really think about access to those people who, including youth, who should not have access to firearms. It starts there. It's some other aspects. We know that with putting guns in the hands of juveniles, there are issues developmentally as well. There's conflict issues that perhaps they may not be emotionally or mature enough to deal with. So it can be a really ugly situation. And particularly, it's so tragic, any of them, but particularly when you have kids killed in the home that a firearm is at, or someone has access to an unlocked firearm, that makes it even more devastating.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, regardless of how you feel about the Second Amendment and, operating and adhering to your Second Amendment rights. When you add a firearm in the house, I think that just really kind of raises the bar here. So how does the presence of firearms in households, whether secure or unsecured, increase the risk for very young children? We're talking 1- and 3-year-old victims here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do know that particularly if there's unsecured assets in the home, that the chances of the child, the teenager, an adult, a family member being hurt goes up exponentially. Unfortunately, unlike many other states, Georgia doesn't have a law where you have to have a locking device inside your home. We know that when you have those types of laws in those states, it shows that outcomes are much better. You reduce the risk of not only intentional, but particularly unintentional firearm death as well. And it's a really difficult conversation because you can protect your home according to the Second Amendment, but also we need to make sure we protect our family members who we intend to protect. And oftentimes we know that some people don't get gun control training. They don't get good training. It's not required for them to understand how to lock up their devices and things. And so we got to do a better job of being responsible gun owners, and also do a better job of making sure that gun owners have the resources that they need, often also backed by law.
I want to take a little piece out of the equation and really hone in on this portion of the conversation. Let's talk about systemic issues. Housing instability, poverty, or access to guns are most likely directly linked to kids being caught in shootings like we saw in Atlanta and Monroe County. Do you see those 2 things really kind of coming together?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing we need to think about, we know when we're talking about gun violence, particularly among youth, the use of their African American men, not only as the offenders, but also those who are often the ones, the victims, and not talking about those who are caught up in the gunfire. We also know that many times in these communities, that I'm talking about, guns are carried for protection. It's not that they're going out to be hunters. They are afraid. And so you have afraid people who have these issues who are not developed fully as adults. That can be signs for real tragedy. And we also know that when it comes to gun violence, and particularly, we know that it has to do with systemic issues. We know that there are things in the community that we can do. We know that it's not just an issue that we can police our way out of. And so, absolutely, there are some systemic aspects around. We know who are often the victims, particularly when it comes to these incidents, particularly when you're talking about youth and young Black men ages 15 to 19. It can take it even farther to 34. But yes, absolutely, there's systemic aspects, economic aspects around it, educational aspects around it. But at the end of the day, it does not cause us to elude or escape personal accountability. And so there's also those accountability aspects in place that we as a society, whether the justice system or families, right, or social services can make sure to try to fill in the gap.
And for parents who are watching today, tell us what's the very first step that they can take at home to reduce the chance of their child ever getting caught up in gun violence?
Hold yourselves accountable. That's a really great question. Hold yourselves accountable and know the responsibility. Understand the power of having a firearm. And if you're also just, thinking about you having sleepovers and things like that, if you're sending your kids to someone's home, have a conversation with their parent. Is there a firearm there? And if there's a firearm there, are you protecting it safely? Are you keeping the ammunition and things separate from the actual firearm and things like that? Where is it at? Will the kids be around it? So you also want to make sure where your kids are at, not only in your home, but in your community where they may be, that everyone is practicing good gun safety. And if they're not, then I think you want to make sure your child is not in that environment. Make sure you check your child's friends. Understand what's going on in your child's life. That to make sure they're not being bullied. Make sure there's things are not going on where they're afraid. Make sure that they are good, because when we have that lapse, that's when you start to see the access to guns. So it's more than just physical locks. It's also having emotional and mental bonds with these children as well.
All right, Dr. Thaddeus Johnson, thank you so much for your expertise and your insight. Great tips there. And we'll see you back again here on The Take soon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you all.
And stay with us. You are watching The Take. We'll have more headlines and more deeper conversations when we come back.
That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Erica Kirk telling a massive crowd in Glendale, Arizona, that she forgave the person who is charged with shooting and killing her husband, conservative activist Charlie Kirk. As thousands gather for Charlie Kirk's memorial, the nation faces some tough questions on free speech. Kirk was a staunch advocate for free speech protections, but in the wake of his death, there are some new concerns, from the suspension of ABC late night host Jimmy Kimmel to new rules at the Pentagon. Joining us now is NBC's Washington correspondent Alice Barr. So, Alice, thanks for being here with us today. Charlie Kirk had commented on the importance of free speech, and many yesterday, including President Trump, saluted his commitment to that. But now we're getting some new concerns about censorship. How bipartisan is this?
Yeah, it is one rare area of bipartisanship where there are some pretty substantial voices speaking out on both sides of the political divide, even as the murder of Charlie Kirk and the fallout from that seems to have been such a wedge issue. This now question of concerns being raised about free speech is one that is bridging kind of that gap. And for instance, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, very prominent conservative, he has said that he thinks it's very dangerous to have had the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, weigh in on the Charlie Kirk comments, then leading to Jimmy Kimmel being at least temporarily pulled off of the air, the comments that he made about the way that Republicans are responding to the assassination. We heard the FCC chairman sharply criticizing Jimmy Kimmel and then suggesting that there could be potential action against Disney, the owner of ABC, potentially losing its license, potentially having ABC stations that carry that program lose their license. President Trump has since made similar comments, and from Ted Cruz to also Senator Rand Paul, another noted conservative. He said that the FCC was wrong to weigh in and that he would fight any attempt by the government to get involved with speech. And then Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, prominent Democrat, he also was on NBC's Meet the Press, as well as Senator Paul over the weekend, saying that censorship, that's what he's calling what we're seeing out of the federal government, only serves to further divide us. So there are prominent voices on both sides. To note as well, we also heard from Senator Paul and others that while they believe that anyone is entitled to free speech to say what they believe, that they're not necessarily entitled to employment. So that's been the caveat from many on the Republican side that are speaking out. They think the government has absolutely no right to weigh in on whether, for instance, Jimmy Kimmel should stay on the air, but that if, popular opinion drives him off the air, that's another point.
So, Alice, here's something that really hits home for us. There's also this portion of the conversation. New Defense Department restrictions say that journalists can no longer gather or report information, even unclassified, without authorization from the government or risk losing their press credentials. What sort of pushback are we getting from this?
Yeah, and this kind of goes into the same bucket because this is now a Trump administration, a federal government policy that's went out in a memo to department staff and to journalists that are credentialed with the Pentagon. The National Press Club has come forward strongly, calling this a direct assault on independent journalism. And again, this is the kind of thing where journalists go out, they do their own digging. That is how they uncover the kind of information that the administration maybe doesn't want out there. But that is the kind of information that Americans, have sort of always been entitled to in a free press society where journalists can use their kind of wits and their skills to come up with and uncover that kind of information. Again, even if unclassified, they're now being told if they do things that are outside of the government authorized information, they can lose their press credentials. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth staunchly defended the change here, and he said that, quote, the press does not run the Pentagon, the people do.
Pete Hegseth, who was a former member of the press. All right, Alice Barr, thank you so much there for bringing us that live from D.C. Plenty more stories for you coming up. Stay with us. This is The Take. Well, welcome back here on The Take. Some big changes coming to Emory. Starting next year, many undergrads from families earning under $200,000 won't pay a dime in tuition. It is part of a $1 billion push to ease student debt. Let's take a deep dive into this bold move with John Leach, Emory's Associate Vice Provost for Enrollment and University Financial Aid. Welcome to the show. So let's get right into it. What's the driving force behind this move?
Well, good morning, and thank you. We are super excited here at Emory about this. The driving force really is Emory's long-standing commitment to meeting full demonstrated need for families, and this has been a part of our DNA for quite a while. And this latest push really comes from brand new interim president, Leah Ward Sayers, and she wanted to hit the ground running. She wanted to make big strides in the world of affordability. And so opening up this affordability picture for families, as you said, who make under $200,000 and who are admitted, returning current students, their tuition will be covered by a combination of grants and scholarships. And this is an effort to best communicate our affordability, to best communicate that an Emory education is available for those who qualify for admission. We want those families, as they have the conversation around which university or college to attend, we want to do our best to take costs off the table and have families talk about what is the best educational fit for them.
And they may be listening to this story and saying, how do I know if I qualify? families making under $200,000 here. But if they demonstrate the financial need, what does that process actually look like and how simple is it?
Right. So the simple part is we're able to communicate, okay, those families who earn $200,000 or less. The more complicated portion is that families will need to, of course, apply to Emory University as undergraduate students. And they will also need to complete the financial aid applications that Emory requires of students. So that includes both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So that is it is a process that while it's not fun, at the end of that rainbow, if the student is admitted and they do fall into our need-based population, they will receive robust financial aid, and that includes for our lower income families, that includes often grants and scholarships that actually exceed the cost of tuition. So it could be the entire cost of education. So it is this next step, this for these families at $200,000 and below, it is really to bring in those families who in the past would not qualify for quite as much need-based aid.
So you may be listening to the story and say, no way they can sustain this. So how will Emory ensure that the program is sustainable long term and it doesn't place the unexpected financial strain on the university?
That is, again, it's part of who we are as a university. We, as you mentioned, we spend $250 million a year. So this is Emory money on undergraduate financial aid alone. The commitment that we have is based on, in large part, is based on our endowment. So a healthy portion of that, of the funding for this, comes from Emory's endowment that helps us to give back. It's part of our mission as an institution to be affordable for those families, and we utilize that endowment, the earnings off of our endowment, to be able to support our student body.
All right, really quick. We got a high school junior watching right now. What's your message to them about choosing Emory with this new program in place?
High school junior, I would say focus on being a high school junior, focus on being in high school, focus on doing well. If Emory is one of those institutions that you want to apply to, make sure that you go through the admissions application process. And as part of that, if your family falls into, if you think your family will fall into those categories, apply for financial aid, do it as early as possible. Have a conversation with your parents about what they are able to and willing to pay for college. And hopefully that student will be admitted to Emory, and hopefully that we will be able to provide that high-end need-based financial aid for those students.
All right, John Leach, thank you for being with us. I've been out of high school for 20 plus years. If I could apply, I would.
We'd love to have you.
Plenty more is in store for you. Stay with us. This is The Take. All right, let's get you with the top items that you need to know about the ongoing showdown. The Senate failed to pass the House-approved funding bill and also rejected the Democrats' alternative proposal, escalating the risk of a government shutdown at midnight on September 30th. Democrats say they will not support a continuing resolution unless critical health care supports are restored, including Affordable Care Act subsidies and Medicaid funding. Republicans argue these demands are outside the scope of a, quote, clean, temporary funding measure. If no deal is reached, hundreds of thousands of federal employees could face furloughs, pay delays, and disruptions to government services, ranging from national parks to food aid programs. As we do every Monday, let's welcome back in financial advisor Andrew Poulos. So basically, this week is out for getting a deal nailed down because of Rosh Hashanah. That only leaves just a couple of days to get a deal done. How do you see this sitting here at the moment?
It's going to be tough getting at this point with 1 week left and obviously federal employees out. I just see it as a tough measure. Big point of contention, of course, is the ACA healthcare subsidies, and Democrats are blaming the Republicans. Republicans are blaming Democrats. I think we're truly headed towards a government shutdown. How long this government shutdown might be, if it happens, is unknown. Of course, President Trump mentioned that it could be prolonged. So clearly, both sides are just at a distance of where we need to be in order to avoid a government shutdown. And if it becomes a prolonged one, it's going to be problematic going into tax season coming up, and how the IRS will be affected.
All right, Andrew, so let's be honest here. The impacts of a government shutdown are not created equal. So for people living paycheck to paycheck, what are the most immediate risks that they should be aware of?
I mean, look, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're getting some sort of, WIC or SNAP benefits, those could be impacted. Seniors living on retirement benefits, Social Security will continue to receive them, but there could be delays. There could be delays for benefits, right? So we could see all kinds of widespread impacts. Who's going to be impacted, how much, will really just is yet to be determined. I'm hopeful that it's not a prolonged shutdown, and this is just some more what we are accustomed to seeing with political theatrics. That's what I'm hoping for. But of course, there's a stalemate right here, and there's no telling what each side wants in order to be able to work for the American people.
No shortage of theatrics these days, and that is for sure. But let's talk a little bit deeper on how a government shutdown can really ripple throughout the broader economy. We're talking consumer confidence, small business revenue, or even the stock market. We could all feel it regardless of how much you're making.
Well, absolutely. Look, I mean, you're talking about only essential employees, federal essential employees will work, which means TSA, military, federal law enforcement, but they're all going to be working without pay. They will get back pay once the shutdown ends, but there's no telling, right? If you're a federal employee and you're going on, for example, 2-3 months, if we have some prolonged shutdown without pay, it's going to affect your family and your livelihood. So we're going to see the economy be impacted to some extent. Obviously, there's no telling what it will be, but then you'll have, like we said, families who live and rely on some sort of government assistance are going to be impacted. Seniors, certainly the market may not take this well. That's another concern. And there's just no telling really where we're at. We have just a presidency with President Trump right now, where some things are difficult to get done between Democrats and Republicans. It looks like the stalemate will have an impact, but no one wants to go to work knowing that they're not getting paid on Fridays.
Yes, from your perspective, what would you say right now is the smartest financial move for families really quickly here who might be impacted?
Look, if you've got a little bit of savings, try to have that rainy day fund available. If you're a federal employee, be prepared for what's coming, of course. I think the writing's on the wall at this point, and just try to manage your finances well until we get through this, what appears to be government shutdown, and we'll get over to the other side.
All right, Andrew Polos, thank you for being here with us every week. Always glad to have you.
Good to see you.
You're watching The Take. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Mortgage rates are finally showing signs of relief after the Fed's latest rate cut. But for many home buyers, affordability remains a serious challenge. Right now, the average 30-year mortgage sits at just over 6.3%, the lowest we've seen in almost a year. But even with the lower rates, home prices are still a big hurdle, up about 50% nationwide since the start of this decade. And inflation remains stubborn, running above the Fed's 2% target, which is why the rates may not fall as far and as fast as buyers hope. All right, let's get some insight with Dr. Alex Su, Associate Professor of Finance at Georgia Tech's College of Business. Thanks for being on the show. All right, the rates are easing, but we still have high prices and stubborn inflation. Is now really the right time to buy?
Well, so the Fed cutting rates now will help some. So typically long-term yields, which the mortgage rates are tied to, do fall when the Fed cuts the Fed funds rate. And lower yields means lower borrowing rates for home builders to borrow money and build homes. We'll have a fairly severe housing shortage in the U.S., anywhere from $2 to $5 million, depending on the estimates you're looking at, in terms of single-family homes. And on the demand side, obviously lower interest rates will allow borrowers to borrow at a cheaper rate, and that should increase demand.
So why don't the mortgage rates drop as quickly as the Fed lowers its benchmark rate?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a complicated question, but obviously, interest rates is a price, right? So we know that price is determined based on supply and demand. So if mortgage demand spikes because people think now might be a good time to get in, it will increase applications and then potentially can increase the rates slightly. Of course, as you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the segment, inflation is always the big concern. The Fed target inflation is about 2%. We're nowhere near that. We're actually closer to 3% right now than 2%. So, if we see inflation rise further in the next 6 months, potentially the Fed would have to stop the rate cuts after 2025.
For people who aren't into numbers and economics, they really just want to know one thing: how much am I paying monthly? So for first-time buyers here in Atlanta, how much of a difference does a half percentage point or even a full percentage point in the rates make on a monthly payment?
A very big difference. I don't have the calculator in front of me to do the math, but a 1% decrease in rates could cut your borrowing costs, monthly borrowing costs, by probably 30-40%. So it's a big deal. And we're at the beginning of a potentially rate cutting cycle. So the first cut is 25 basis point. The expectation is they're going to cut 2 more times in 2025. But whether or not the cutting will continue in 2026 is way to be seen.
Now, we know Atlanta's housing market has been one of the hottest in the country for years now. What do you think about the lower rates risk of sparking another surge in competition here? It got pretty wild at one point. You think that will come back around?
That's another, again, everything comes down to supply and demand. And the lower rates will increase, obviously, buyer interest, both for potential home buyers as well as investors, right? Lower rates, easier to borrow money, and people tend to want to put that money to work. And real estate is one of the kind of potential assets people like to invest in. So lower rates can lead to more demand for housing, which might lead to increase in home prices. But that's hard to say at this point because there's so much uncertainty in the macro environment with policy, both fiscal policy and monetary policy, that we'll kind of have to wait and see at least through 2025 to see how things go.
All right. Dr. Alex Su, thank you for being here with us and bringing us all that great insight talking mortgage rates.
Thanks.
Well, let's get you with a live look outside right now. Good morning to Blue Ridge. Yeah, it is the first day of fall, y'all, but it is not feeling like it. Summer still has a hold on us. We are going to be beautiful, sunny, and hot out there. It's still dry. Our meteorologists with your weather impact team still saying we need the rain. But those chances aren't coming today. So if you want to get out and enjoy. Well, Georgia families are feeling the pinch. New numbers show our state is among the top 10 in the nation for credit card debt, with balances going up nearly $1 billion in just 3 months. The average Georgia household now carries more than $12,000 in credit card debt, and that is up nearly $250 just the last 3 months. Altogether, Georgians owe more than $46 billion, a jump of almost $1 billion in a single quarter. So what's driving up Georgia's credit card debt? Let's try and get the answer from Thomas Nitschke, a vice president there with Money Management International. Thanks for being here with us today. Did I get the last name right?
That's it. Thanks for having me.
Yay, nailed it. All right, we're going to have a great interview here. What is the main culprit for all of this credit card debt?
Yeah, well, I think as Alex touched on it previously, we've seen inflation was a persistent problem for the last few years. And what happens is most households will use credit cards as really an extension of their income. If they're just making it month to month, as prices go up, what we've seen, especially around housing related prices, not just the cost of the house itself, but ancillary costs like taxes, insurance, utilities, those things all have crept up significantly. And really people lean on credit cards as a relatively safe, familiar financial tool. And unfortunately, you only have so much runway. If you continue to use credit cards month to month over a long period of time, that can really add up. And then you either run out of limit or you find yourself unable to make even minimum payments. So, among those that turn to our nonprofit for credit counseling, the average consumer has almost $30,000 in unsecured credit card debt that we're working to help them pay down.
So let's talk numbers. What does nearly $13,000 in average household credit card debt actually mean for families here?
Yeah, I mean, it's an additional monthly payment that they've got to, take into account in their budget. It can, obviously limit spending ability if you're trying to pay off older debt. And like it said, that is just the average, $13,000 per household. So, there's obviously people that are dealing with significantly more than that. Among the clients that we're counseling, it's more like $30,000, which when you're talking about a, 28, 29% interest rate on some credit cards, it can be very difficult to pay that down once you have that much in debt. So it's a real challenge for a lot of households.
What about people who are using their credit cards for everyday expenses, gas, groceries? Is that a slippery slope when you tell yourself in your mind, I'm going to pay it right off, I'm just using this card for the points, but you look up and you haven't paid it?
Right. I mean, we have the best of intentions, right? We think we can handle it all, right? But when you're using that month after month, and then prices continue to go up month after month, inflation continues to be a problem, it can be very difficult to right the ship. And so basically what we're seeing is that, incomes haven't kept up with the increases in cost of living on average. So more and more people are struggling with that. We see more and more consumers struggling with debt that is already in a collection status. About 1 in 4 consumers that we're counseling in Georgia comes to us with at least one debt that's already in a collection status, which means that it's been unpaid for several months and been charged off to a third-party collection agency. So at that point, it becomes very difficult because it's reported on your credit that then limits your ability to obtain new credit. It can limit your ability to buy a car or a home or potentially even work at certain places. So it really does become sort of a snowball once you go down that path, if you're not able to get control of it.
Really quick here, we got about 30 seconds. A lot of people have been dipping into their retirement savings to pay off current debt, so kind of going to the future to pay for life currently. Good idea, bad idea?
In general, it's not something we recommend because you really are stealing from your future, and that's money that should be earning interest over the years to support yourself in retirement. So it really is more of an option of last resort. If you're going to pull on those funds, it's a better idea to do it as a loan instead of a withdrawal. Because if you take it as a withdrawal, there's an extra penalty and taxes that you pay on it. So if you have access to take it as a loan, that is a decent option to consider, but not as a withdrawal. It's much better to work with your creditors to try to reduce the interest rates or come to an agreement on a settlement that you can pay off on that account, or look towards friends or family. Try to find anything that you can except for stealing against your future retirement, because it can be very detrimental to your long-term financial health.
All right, thanks for the tips. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As we said earlier in our show, Congress has until September 30th to get a deal done and avoid a government shutdown. CNN's Caroline Woods joining us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Good morning there. Thanks for being here. It seems like there's one wrong move. The lights could go out. Catch us up on where we're sitting now.
Hey there. Good morning, Aisha. Yes, happy Monday. And as Monday morning gets rolling in D.C., here's where we stand up on a potential government shutdown. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer urged President Trump on Sunday to set a meeting to hammer out a new spending bill. As of right now, no word on if Trump will make that happen. On Saturday, he said he'd, quote, love to meet with Dems, but added that he didn't think it would have any impact. Now, the current federal budget runs dry on September 30th, risking a government shutdown if no deal is made. Congressional Democrats have made health care a red line, demanding that any legislation include an extension of the Affordable Care Act's enhanced tax credits. Those are set to expire at the end of this year. Any funding bill will need 60 votes to pass, which means Republicans will have to persuade some Democrats to vote with them to clear that threshold. Aisha?
So a big announcement expected today looking to link pregnant women's use of Tylenol to autism there. Let's talk more about how that could impact us.
Yes, the Trump administration is expected to announce today that the use of Tylenol during pregnancy could potentially cause autism. That's according to a report in the Washington Post, citing 4 sources familiar with the pending reveal. Now, federal health officials will also reportedly highlight a form of folate known as leucovorin as a potential autism treatment, according to the Post. The Department of Health and Human Services and the White House did not immediately respond to a media request for comment. However, on Saturday, President Trump said his administration would be making an autism-related announcement today. day. Tylenol, meanwhile, posted on its website that there is, quote, no proven link between taking acetaminophen and autism. Aisha?
All right, so the EV revolution just hit another speed bump. Let's talk about Nissan's move to pull back on one of its greenest bets.
Yeah, good news, bad news here. Nissan Motor is unveiling a new electric vehicle, but also cutting back on production. The 2026 Leaf EV features a complete body style remodel. The former compact car will now be more SUV-like to better compete with rivals by Hyundai, Tesla, and Ford. It also aims to be priced more competitively, starting around $29,900. Buying one could be tough, though, amid a global EV battery shortage. Nissan says this is forcing them to reduce their 2026 Leaf production by more than half this fall. So good price, you just might not be able to get one.
All right, so from cars to food, that poke night favorite might come with a little bit more than you bargained for. Let's talk about this recall that Costco just issued that actually includes Georgia.
Yeah, Costco is recalling over 3,000 pounds of a seafood product over possible listeria concerns. The company says batches of its ahi tuna wasabi poke could be contaminated by the potentially deadly bacteria. The risk actually comes from green onions used in the product. Listeria is the third leading cause of death from foodborne infection in the U.S., according to the CDC. The health agency says no illnesses related to this recall have been reported so far. It was sold under Costco's signature Kirkland brand in 33 states, including Georgia, as you said. You can find specific information on Costco's websites and, throw your poke away or return it to Costco for a full refund. I love poke too, but not wasabi, so I'm safe.
Yeah, you definitely don't want that on the side. Caroline Woods, thank you so much for being here with us today. Plenty more in store for you. Stick around. This is The Take. Last month, 280 teams from across 16 countries sent their best mechanical athletes to China to compete in the World Humanoid Robot Games, or the Robot Olympics. There were the Olympic staples of boxing, gymnastics, soccer, but also some dance-offs and household tasks like sorting and cleaning. The games were meant to showcase how far robots have come, but they also provide a window into the future, replacing metal games with war games. Let's dive into this world with Mike LeBlanc, co-founder of Foundation Future Industries, which is developing its own humanoid robot. Welcome to the show. So when people hear humanoid robots, they think of either sci-fi movies or those big demonstrations. From your perspective, where does this field actually stand right now?
Well, I think that's what people would be really surprised to hear, is that, to me, 5 years ago, I think these were something of science fiction and something that you saw in the movies. But today, these are humanoids that are working and getting better week over week. So we already have robots to work. There are already robots on manufacturing lines that are actually replacing people. This is technology of today, and I think people are going to be shocked at just how quickly it comes to market.
I mean, the fact that they had a whole Olympics for it, that's already shocking enough. But what business models do you see as most sustainable for humanoid robots selling units right now, leasing or service-based models?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are building these robots for the home. I think that's incredibly tough because there are so many tasks in the home. I also think that it's very creepy to have a robot. I've got 3 little kids there. I wouldn't really want to throw a humanoid in with them just yet. But I think that a lot of auto manufacturing jobs, warehousing jobs, things like that, you're really seeing a lot of pick and place tasks that human beings weren't really designed to do. They've just been the last thing that we haven't been able to automate, and humanoids make a perfect addition to those lines.
Let me tell you what, I reorganized the kitchen drawers yesterday. I would have loved to have a humanoid as an assistant, but yeah, you're right, pretty weird with the kids around. But your company is actually going all in on connecting humanoid robots in a military capacity. Why is that?
Well, I was a Marine for over 10 years, and I think defense has just always been in our DNA. We really see this, although we see the fun robots going and playing soccer in the Olympics in Beijing, we also saw them at the Victory Day Parade, where they were showing them as tools of war. And I think that anything that our adversaries are going to come up with is really something that we need to be ready to counter as well.
And it's always a competition, right? Think about the moon landing, how competitive that was. So how do other nations stack up in mobilizing robotic troops?
This is really broken down to America and China right now. I think there's a lot of danger, though, that these humanoids can go anywhere. And so you can start to see them coming in from any country. And just as we've seen the sky get filled up with drones, I think that you're going to see the battlefield filled up with humanoids.
But if a humanoid robot actually makes any sort of mistake or causes harm, In that instance, who should or would or could be held accountable? You're talking the manufacturer, the software developer, or the operator. How would that be?
Well, I think the infrastructure would be a lot like drones. So when I was stationed in the Middle East for one of my tours, I was involved in all of the drones that would drop bombs in Iraq against ISIS, and I was one of more than 10 approvers that had to go and review that there wouldn't be any civilian casualties, that we actually thought we had good evidence the person was there, etc., before we would sign off on any bomb. And so, people very, very realistically get fired over this. People know that when they put their name on that bomb drop or on whatever that action is, that could have huge ramifications for their career. So I think that'll be the same for humanoids.
And when you talk about the link between humanoids and drones, there are a lot of drone regulations. So do you believe the industry should adopt let's say a formal code of ethics before the humanoids robots are widely deployed?
Well, I think what's the old saying? America innovates, Europe regulates, and China imitates. So I'm sure that we'll be seeing that as we go over to the EU, and I think that we're even starting to see that in some of the plants that we're going to there. But those will come with time, I imagine.
So let's look ahead here. How do we make sure that the humanoid robots are used to enhance human life rather than to undermine trust, safety, or even opportunity? A lot of people talk about, AI taking away jobs, robots taking away jobs. That used to be just a conversation as it related to robots, but now it could actually be a real thing. So how do we actually make sure that they, kind of coexist?
Well, I think that robots are really going to create jobs. And the best example that you can see is the ATM. So when you got the ATM cash machine at banks, people thought that was going to put bank tellers out of business. But what actually happened was banks were able to open many more branches, and they hired, 10x, 100x the tellers that they ever had before the ATM. And that's really what we're going to see with this, next industrial revolution, is we're going to see more of a building of the middle class and less reliance on needing to look to countries like China or countries throughout Asia to subsidize all the materials that we get in America.
All right, we all grew up watching the Jetsons. We never thought that we'd see the day, but more and more, here we are, Mike LeBlanc.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, thanks for being with us. And plenty more in store for you. Stay with us. This is The Take. Welcome back, everybody. Taking a live look over Truist Park tonight. The Braves taking on the Washington Nationals. They're on an 8-game win streak. Brought it home, beating up on those Detroit Tigers. Let's see if they can get it done back here at Truist Park. Before we go, my final take. It may be the first day of fall, but today's heat makes it a good day to have some ice cream. It's National Ice Cream Cone Day. Ice cream cones came on the scene way back in the 1800s in French cookbooks. Soon they made their way across the pond and became popular in the U.S. In 1912, an inventor actually came up with the machine to make cones and then sold his invention to Nabisco, who still makes cones today. So, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream to put in your cone? According to the International Dairy Foods Association, these are the top 5 flavors in America: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, and my world as a kid, I call that Neapolitan. Mix them all together. Number 4, butter pecan. Number 5, cookie dough. For me, I gotta add some mint chocolate chip with that cookie dough on a warm, fresh waffle cone. Little known Aisha fact, one of my first jobs was at Ron's Pizza and Ice Cream back in Flint, Michigan, where I made waffle cones fresh all day long. Good stuff there. We hope you take some time to get out and enjoy yourself a little ice cream cone on this hot first day of fall. We thank you for being with us here on The Take and diving deeper, going beyond the headlines. We do it every day here on 11Alive Plus in the ATL at 9 a.m. We expect for Chesley to be back this week as he enjoys the rest of a great vacation. And thank you for being with us, everybody. Make it a great one.